Hello, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours with Tertulia for Authors. I'm Linda Hammis, co-founder of Tertulia and your host for our time together each and every Friday. Without further ado, let me introduce our guest for today, author Wendy Tsu. She is the author of Bo the Baked Potato, her debut children's book. Hey, thank you for being here, Wendy.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here. I so value these Friday sessions. They've been so immensely helpful for me and to meet other people. And I've loved Tertulia, and so I'm just grateful to be here.
Awesome. Great. Now, Wendy, just to frame it up, she has MBA and Master's of Education from Stanford, highly educated, impressive person, started a career in launching public charter schools with the KIP network. And she's had a very cool and interesting pivot these past few months to be an author. And we're going to hear about how she did that and just a few stats about her. She has led story times at dozens of public elementary schools with her book nationwide. She is connected with more than 175 school leaders and read to thousands upon thousands of early readers. This is age range 3 to 5. And wait for it. She is now on track to set a Guinness World Record for most story times led by an author within a 12-month period. So that's actually a category that she got approved by the governing organization of Guinness. So I love that.
Last month.
Awesome. Congrats. Wendy, tell us about Bo the Baked Potato. What is it about and what made you decide to write it?
Yeah, so I think what I'll do is I'll actually share a couple pictures real quick. Perfect. So Bo the Baked Potato started when I was 5 years old. This is a picture from a classroom that I was at reading at recently, where you'll see the artwork that all these little kids did, and it says, "We are authors." I first wrote a version of Bo when I was 5 at my elementary school, and it was an author program that my school led now almost 31 years ago. And ever since I was a kid, I've just always loved potatoes. I mean, I still do. I'm wearing a hat that says mashed potatoes. And my drawings looked an awful lot like these drawings here on the wall. And my dad, all these years later, had kept that artwork. And so fast forward when my very good friend was giving birth to her first kid, whose name is Bo, hence the book's name is Bo the Baked Potato. I wanted my gift to my very good friend to be a children's book. And my dad had the really great idea of saying, well, actually, what about that old story that you would kind of drawn some scribblings about and wrote about when you were a little kid? And last Thanksgiving, so just past Thanksgiving, he shared with me my old piece of artwork. And then I started working with my friend and we started illustrating, collaborating, and turning it into then a children's book about potatoes. And I've been obsessed with potatoes since I was 5. I have a whole text thread with probably 100 of my friends from business school and from undergrad that is just a celebration of potatoes. My favorite one is actually potato salad. Maybe one of these days I'll write a book about the potato salad. But this book in particular is about Bo, the baked potato, whose best friend is Max, the mashed potato, and Ty, the tater tot. And they go on this adventure across Pancake Land, across Butter Lake, across gravy volcanoes to essentially meet this wise elder potato. And for me, this journey of writing Bo has been incredibly fun, really more for the story times. A stat that I think about an awful lot is the fact that childhood literacy is decreased significantly. And I thought about this a lot when I was getting my master's of education at Stanford. No surprise that people and kids are reading less and less. But one of the greatest antidotes to that are author visits. It's when authors come to the schools and they lead a story time and they walk through their journey of writing the story. And what's amazing is that for little kids, it's shown longitudinally that that will increase their habits of readership by 20%. For me, the reason why I flashed this picture first is this was an exercise that I did with the school actually in partnership, where we talked about what would it look like for kids to write stories. And then after I read mine, I could read theirs. And what's amazing that some of them this summer now are actually turning those books like this one says The Pig and the Big Eye into an actual like book with their parents. That's incredible. Like that's entrepreneurship. Everyone in here is an author. I was a venture capitalist for 10 years. Um, And part of my time as a venture capitalist was studying founders like Linda from the very beginning. And part of that journey is just taking a bet and sharing whatever is in your mind with other people. I mean, isn't writing a book that? Aren't children's book that? Right? Isn't entrepreneurship just a creative idea in your head that you share with other people? The book is the greatest manifestation of entrepreneurship. And it's a creative endeavor, but as we all know, as we're sitting here, right, it's a business too. And so for me, I do these story time because I want kids to feel that they can be authors. Because all it is just an idea that they're sharing externally. So, my career started in education, so I launched schools in the West Coast. So my heart has always been very much around how do we help people learn better? But my heart was also in tech. I grew up in the Bay Area. So I love companies like Tertulia. I love companies that are reimagining ways to make things better. And so for those 10 years living in New York, I still am in New York, my time was spent, with founders all the time. And when I look at this kind of author journey, it's really just the merger of the two. It's what was my passion to begin with, which is how do we enable people to learn better, combined with this other passion around how do we invoke the creative spirit? And how do we evoke that, at least within the children's book era, with little kids from the very beginning? How do we invite them that their ideas really matter and that they can become something? I mean, my book, it's hardcovered, right? But it's no different than what is the work up here on this picture, right? Mine's just covered by a bound and there's a stapled. But
Hmm.
theoretically, it's the same action that's going into it. In terms of my time as a venture capitalist into my work now, so when I reach out to all these schools, um, you know, my honest answer is the first time I ever read to a school, it was, I might even have the picture. I think it was this one right here. So this was the very first school I read to, it's PS 319 Williamsburg. And I've of course gone on to read to a lot of different schools. The first school, it was just because I was talking to another mom and she said, "Oh, you should really read at my children's school." And I had never done a story time before. I'd spoken at conferences before, like everyone here has probably, but like I had never actually spoken in front of little kids ever, in this capacity. And she connected me with the principal and we scheduled a story time. I had never done one before, but what I'd said was, "Hey, one of your daughter's mother is a good friend of mine. I recently published a book. I live locally just a few blocks away. I really believe I flashed this stat. Like this is almost a copy and paste. And then I flashed this stat. Those are the only two stats I said, which is that I would love to lead a story time because I would love to invite people and kids to feel, you know, more excited about reading. Is this something that your school cares about?" And she said, "Let's do it." And then within the next week, we scheduled that first story time. And I remember it was four TK classes. So TK is like usually 3 years old, three, 4. And it was four of them. So around probably close to 60, 70 kids that day. And so I read it 4 times. Um, and it was the best feeling ever because I had so many kids hug me afterwards and say that this was their first story time that they've ever had at their school. And what's crazy is that for many of the schools I've read at, I am like the only author that has gone to their school. And we're talking about some of the nation's best, like nationally ranked schools, especially when I'm back in Cupertino in the Bay Area. And it kept kind of happening and happening. The schools are really gracious. They always send a link for parents to purchase my books. I'll usually do a signing thereafter. But the reason why I do these story times is I just started hearing consistently that there aren't enough authors coming to schools. And yet it's such an appreciated activity. And it's such an important thing for kids to have exposure to. So then over time, that one school became then me kind of thinking back to old stuff that I used to do when I was in working education, which is this is a really great site, greatschools.org. It has all the schools in the United States listed. It has principals' contact information, teachers' contact information. Um, and I would just start researching what are some of the schools that are around me in the Williamsburg area? Okay, then what about Park Slope? Okay, then starting make my way to Long Island City. Long Island City, for those in Brooklyn, sorry, in New York, it's a real desert when it comes to story times. There are barely any libraries there. And then making my way to Manhattan. When I'm back in the Bay Area, I always prioritize story times there too, especially in the morning. And then, I started just kind of keeping track. So this list is just a screenshot of my simple Excel, but it has probably close to 300, 400 schools in there. Sometimes the teachers will say, well, we don't have time this time, maybe next time, like, things like that. And what I found incredible is that every single, like, not all teachers respond because maybe they're busy, but I will say this, for every one that does see my email, they almost always say yes because they realize the importance of story times.
What I'm hearing is you just have to ask. I mean, there is
Yeah.
a lot of love in the chat for you, Wendy, telling this story. And one of the questions that's come up is like, well, why should anyone want to hear what I have to say? Well, they do. The teachers want this. In my experience, too, even though there's a lot of pressure on teachers to cover a lot of material in a short amount of time and the whole teach to the test stuff, on the occasions when I have asked the teacher to come in, sometimes with my husband, we'll do something about like, cultural heritage, chapter, and we'll come in and talk about what it's like in Cuba because he's Cuban, or we've got come in and said, what is it like to be a journalist? Talk through because we've both been journalists. And the teachers are thrilled, actually. And you're right, maybe they can't fit it in that week, but they're going to tell you when. And
Yes.
because it is the texture in the classroom which starts firing off new creative ideas and synapses for these kids, gets them like woken up out of routine. So you just have to ask. Ask. That's the lesson. And the other thing here is your spreadsheet. I mean, people, she is taking this like methodically.
Yeah.
This is a sales job. It's like make all the leads and go through them. Do you follow up with people when you don't hear back, Wendy?
Yeah, so that's what this is color coded, right?
Yeah.
Green is I've read there, purple is this is not sophisticated stuff too. Like I have, back in my old VC job, I was using like software that cost like $50,000 to track people like Linda. This is just an Excel sheet. It's broken down by, what is it, a library? Is it a school? Is it a bookstore? What is it, right? The
Mhm.
school's name, where it's located, the contact information from this site, and then, notes on the school. Like maybe this school is like, for example, next Friday I have 5 story times because I'm going to be back in California. And so I have back-to-back ones. One of them is a Mandarin immersion school. I'm Chinese, and they asked Wendy, like, it'd be so great if you actually spoke a little Mandarin in the beginning. And I said, okay, let me practice a little bit,
Cool.
and I'll say hello because these kids will love that. So that's
Very cool.
kind of keep notes. Over time, I'll probably move this into, more sophisticated, I don't know, like email tracking system. Um, but for now, like this Excel sheet works for me because my brain thinks like this. But what I wanted to share was this. This was literally just from 6 days ago. I took a screenshot this morning. 6 days ago, August 14th. I'd shot the principal a note. Principal forwarded it to the teacher. That happens pretty commonly. Usually, I always email the principals. Principals always then default to the teachers, which makes sense because I'm teaching to their classes. And then, so this teacher at Braley Elementary, which is it's a top 50 school out there in California, public elementary school. Look what she said. We'd love to have you visit. It's not often students get to see a real life author, even at a top 50 public elementary school in a well-funded area. They're not getting authors to come.
And there are
And
so many authors. I mean,
yes,
there is a supply and demand mismatch happening here.
yes, and look at Muir
Yeah.
Elementary. Muir is another one right there in the Bay Area. This one's a top 30 elementary school. They were they're asking if I have a fee. I don't charge. I don't I actually donate all my book proceeds to a nonprofit called Coach Art, which teaches little kids art and children who have chronic illnesses. So I truly do this, and I do Bo as a complete labor of love. And I think because of that, I don't know, I feel very just pure in my endeavors. And I think that's why I'm able to, bring so much joy to story times because I truly just want kids to feel as if they can be entrepreneurs themselves, telling and sharing stories. But a lot of authors who do go to schools, they do charge.
Mhm.
And that listing could be anywhere between $500 to people like Dave Pilkey, who did Captain Underpants, my favorite author. And he actually did read at my school when I was a kid, which is what got me excited about story times in general. When he was first getting started with Dog Man and Captain Underpants. I think an author like him probably commands almost close to probably 20K, my guess is. But there's a reason why, when he does it more at the district level. So he's
Hmm.
charging the district, and the district brings a bunch of schools and they zoom in together. That's how they're able to share with that higher fee, right? So what I mean to say is, like for a place like Mirror, clearly they've had authors charge in the past. I don't, because I don't feel the need to. But, you know, some schools have established processes with local authors, some haven't. And so for me, I kind of just adapt it to every school. But on the net though, this kind of email, I probably only get like this questionnaire fees, maybe only like once every like 10, 15
Hmm.
schools. Oftentimes it looks more like this. My next step here then, once they've reached out to me is and they've confirmed they'd love to have me there, then my next step usually is great, wonderful. Let's schedule a time. Usually my readings take 20 minutes. They'll usually combine their classes, so that's why usually you'll see it around like 30, 40 people, maybe 60 kids. This one wasn't, I've had a couple assemblies. So this one was around 220 kids. And my preference definitely, I think I prefer when it's more like two classes connected. Um, this one I had 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and 6-year-olds, and 7-year-olds, which is the first
Mm.
year. So their reading levels are very, very different.
Mhm.
So I had to find a way to kind of maneuver that.
One person asked, how do you frame your time during your author visits? You said they're about 20 minutes.
Mhm.
Somebody introduces you, you do a reading and then answer questions.
So my first one, this one right here that I did, oh my gosh, I was so nervous. But I learned a lot. So now what I do is I'll introduce myself as Miss Wendy. I love wearing this shirt because what is Bo wearing? But also green. And so one of my favorite questions to ask kids is, what color is that? And they'll say green, and I say, what color is Miss Wendy wearing? And they say green, and I'll ask them, do we match? And they say yes. So it'll usually be a first round of quick introductions. Hello, my name is Miss Wendy. I'm really excited to share this book. This book, you want to know how old Miss Wendy was when she first started thinking about this book? I was your age. And I say that because usually a moment happens in their eyes and they're like, whoa, whoa, I I could do this? That's my whole point of this, is to show them that they can do this. And then I'll usually ask a few questions in the beginning. I'll ask them, who here likes mashed potatoes? Who here likes potato chips? And then they always go crazy for French fries. Who here likes French fries? And I wish I could send you a video where these kids are just they're like, I love French fries. I love potato chips. And and then from there, I then do the reading. It's about 7 minutes. And then the end, I'll usually ask like some memory recall questions. So of all the different places they traveled to, Pancake Land, Butter Lake, Great Volcano, who here wants to go to Pancake Land if it was real? And a bunch of kids raise their hand. Who here wants to swim through Butter Lake? A bunch of kids raise their hand. And then my last question that actually is what sparked my next book. So Bo was only ever supposed to be kind of one book. Because it's the intention of it was as a book from my very good friend whose son, his name is Bo. But in my last question I'd ask kids, which is one of these story times, I asked them, where would you want Bo to go next? And then a bunch of kids raised their hand. And then they said, we want Bo to go to Texas because my grandma makes the best potatoes there. We want Bo to go to Italy because we love the gnocchi, which is potato based. We want Bo to go to Korea because there's a really famous like Korean dish that's there. So what I started to learn over time is that, whoa, potatoes are actually in every country. So earlier this year, I found out that the United Nations deemed May 30th every year International Potato Day. So then I emailed them and I said, I am doing a book reading at this bookstore in Greenpoint. Would you guys list this on your website? And they did. So if you actually go and type in International Potato Day or the United Nations, I'm probably the only story time. Everything else is related to trade conventions related to farming or potato conventions for manufacturers. And I'm like the one girl who is like holding this book. But what I learned from United Nations is that potatoes are actually one of three vegetables that is in every country. So it's super global. Uh,
Interesting.
and so my hope then is that with these next books, I'll meet the kids where they are. If they want a Bo to go to Texas, well, then I can't wait to partner with a really good friend of mine who lives in Texas, who's a chef there, and we can co-author a book together. I will say this, my next book, though, is going to be Bo Goes to Space. I've had so many kids say they want Bo to go to space. And it's actually factually correct because the first vegetable to go to space by NASA is the potato. And astronaut Don Pettit last year went very viral. We're talking like millions of views for a cute little purple potato that he grew up in space. And so my whole story is going to be about Bo going up into space in a marshmallow um, spaceship, and they pass through cotton candy galaxies. They're trying to save the town from a gummy bear comet. And they eventually meet the purple potato who lives on the moon made of cheese.
I
All
love
these
it.
ideas, by the way, not mine. They are the kids. These from the Q&A, the kids are telling me what they want.
I
They
love it.
they
I love
want
it.
they want Bo to pass through something cotton candy related. They love gummy bears. I didn't really love gummy bears as a kid. They love them. So then I'm like, okay, well, what could the gummy bear be? Oh, comet. And so the dream I'm going to manifest is actually that I do have this book be co-partnered with NASA, so that it can be a book that's actually at their like their space station. That's like my dream.
Love that goal. That's great. There are so many learnings here. I think the just ask with the United Nations example, and that's relevant to anyone, not just a kid's book. I mean, if you have something that's relevant to a particular community of interest, just ask.
They will
Um,
you the Guinness Record, just ask. Well, that one I
just
filled a form,
ask.
right? I filled a form.
Yeah.
And then it took a few months for them to get back to me. But,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
that's great.
yeah.
Wendy, do you do virtual readings as well as live, or just do you focus more on live?
I do mostly live because I like the energy of when I'm there and when I'm able to meet the kids. This statistic here, that was done by the National Literacy Trust, it's mostly been on live author visits. It hasn't been on virtual. And so for me, I think the efficacy is probably higher when it's live. Although if there was some study that showed that virtual also is just as effective, then I would. I think where I would do live is schools that are harder to get to. Um, there are plenty. I'll admit, like the places I'm doing these readings, we're talking Manhattan, we're talking Brooklyn, we're talking Cupertino, San Jose, like Palo Alto. We're talking zip codes that, you know, are more trafficked.
They're not reading deserts.
They're not
They're not book
exactly. They're
deserts.
not reading deserts. I think when I think about like next step, I would really like to meet the deserts. I would love to do some actually in person in the deserts. Like I would love to plan a vacation that's like a 10-day trip where I literally just go on a road tour across deserts and I find that school and I read there. So that way I can understand, what the environment looks like, right? What the school looks like. But eventually I would love to create, I mean, I would love to create a virtual reading program that was specifically designated for deserts, that was virtual, that authors could read to. I think Scholastic has tried to do that, but it doesn't really exist. And Scholastic's probably the best bet out there when it comes to author reading programs.
Reach. Yeah, absolutely. The reach is incredible. Okay, can we pivot a little bit? We talked about the format for how you frame up these visits. We talked about your outreach. It sounds like you have big ambitions to increase that outreach, just hanging it off your own trips and your personal trips, and you're sucking up the energy from these kids to inform your next books. This is an amazing story. Tell us about actually selling the book. How do you go from a school visit to selling? And tell us about the parent interaction.
Yeah. So we have sold in the last few months around almost close to 1,500 books, which is kind of incredible because, you know, I'm self-published here, you know. I did set up a my own publishing company in the sense that I just set up a separate LLC. Um, and but otherwise, like I'm self-published, right? Every bookstore I reach out to, I reach out to. And I've done now 10 bookstore readings. Every school I've done, I reach out to. Uh, and in the beginning, it was just a wave of, call it 100 of my closest friends that I sent an email to see if they'd buy a book. And what's kind of happened over time, I think my target is around 3,000 books by the end of the year. But I'm quite happy with what we've done too. The process really is whenever I do a story time, I'll always ask if they are interested as a school in sending the link out to the book. And on my website, it could be Amazon, Bookshop, it could be whatever. But honestly, actually, most schools, they will buy, I think I have a link in here. They will buy from Ingram. So most schools are like libraries. They buy from Ingram. So if I give them enough of lead time, I had one school, this school, they proactively bought like 80 copies because initially they'd ask, "What's your fee?" And I said, "No fee." And then they said, "Well, then we should just buy your books then." So
And
we'll
they
buy your books.
distributed them to the kids who participated.
Exactly. And then we did a whole signing thing. And so now that's become a pretty common thing now. Not every school does it, but a lot of the schools, what they'll almost always do is they'll always send a link to my book and for parents to grab a copy, of which then if the kids brings it to school, I will sign it. And so on average, I would say every school that I read to, so on average, every school has usually 2 to 3 what's called TK classes, so more like 4-year-olds. And then they'll have like 4 to 5 kinder classes. So we're talking probably around almost close to 300 kids per school, probably 250-ish. And I have tended to see usually around 20 to 25% of parents buying the book. And so that's been surprising to me, but also not because parents care about the education of their kids. More and more, what I'm starting to see now and learn more is actually what about district buying? So all those books that you see, right, in the classroom, I'm wondering if I have a couple, like, um, okay, maybe like this one. Uh, okay, well, all these books here, for example, right? Like this is one of the libraries. So this is actually the second biggest library of a school in California. California has much bigger libraries compared to anyone else. Um, Most of the schools are bought at the district level, and then the district buys it then from Ingram, which is where the libraries and the bookstores also buy it from, which is why it was important for me to have Ingram as my main book printer, my main distributor on the back end. Um, and so what I'm starting to test now is at this point, for a couple of districts, I've read for almost 80% of their schools. And so now now the principals are starting to introduce me to like the district buyers for their children's books. And those volumes are usually higher. Those are in like, the few hundreds, if not at least that. So that's like a whole new world that I'm also learning now, which is like the district level purchasing. And at that point, once you have the districts buying, for me, like what in the beginning, I tried reaching out to bookstores, but I was so little. Like none of these bookstores really, they didn't know who I was. But now when I want to read at a bookstore, it almost 99% happens. Because at this point, I'm saying I've already read at all the local bookstores, all the local schools in your area. Like, the parents, I would love to actually bring more of the teachers and parents I talk to your bookstore. And so you see how the narrative like instantly shifts, right? So when I reach out to schools now, it is so much easier. And when I reach out to bookstores now, it's also so much easier. Um, because bookstores' jobs are to serve the local community. A lot of some of the, I would say, more sophisticated schools that have a good authors program, they will partner with a local bookstore. And that serves as a really great then, partnership opportunity, right? The PTA actually then introduces me to the bookstore. The bookstore then will buy around 30, 40 books in advance for then the parents to come purchase it. So that's primarily been I guess my sales funnel is through schools. And it's been surprising how meaningful it's been.
That is an incredible, incredible run, Wendy. What a great strategy. I'm going to play it back for you guys. All right. don't ever underestimate friends and family. I mean, this wouldn't have even happened without Wendy's friends and writing for her friend's son. And then sort of they're your first buyers, right? Always, always lean in. Whatever type of book you read, friends and family are huge and take every
Yes.
relationship and cultivate it. Then she got her first reading. She went back to her own school. Then she's got two or three under her belt. Then you go to another school and you can say, well, I read at Cupertino. So you're building that, you're building all of these data points, right? Then you've got a teacher who really loves it and is advocating to another teacher to
Yeah.
email the parents in advance, we're having this speaker, this author in 2 weeks. Get the book in advance. I've had that with my kids before. And yes, we definitely buy the books in advance. What more could make an impression, right? That live experience, you'll always have that signed book, right? So you're leveraging that relationship from a few of those readers. Then you get to the point where you've done enough schools in the district that the relationship is strong enough. You get introduced to the district level. Talk about scaling. You get introduced to the local bookstore because there's some kind of relationship there. And even if you don't get the introduction, you can say, I have actually spoken to 400 students within this area. I don't know what bookstore wouldn't find that compelling. So this is a really amazing story, and it isn't just relevant for children's book. One person asked, did you find it important to have an LLC for credibility reasons, or was that more just keeping track of your income?
So I've started 10 companies during my time in DC. And one of them has become quite big. Uh, so honestly, the reason why I start LLC is just the business brain in me. I'm always just a big believer. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it my way first. And of course, then you can from tax reasons expense those, those costs. But the reason why even if a publisher would reach out to me now, the reason I'd say no is because I donate all my proceeds to nonprofit. So if I have a publisher, they're going to take a take, and that's going to take a take rate from the kids and the nonprofit that I donate to. So logistically, when I look at that, I'm like, it doesn't make sense to give someone else a piece of the pie when I could be donating all of that to the nonprofit. But then I have to ask myself, will the publisher help in reach? The truth is that for me, I have the only publisher I would consider my like if this is venture capital, like my Sequoia capital of this world, it'd be Scholastic. I love Scholastic. If Scholastic reached out to me, then I would because they really do a lot of this heavy lifting. All this heavy lifting I'm doing, they're doing. But I haven't seen that as much with other children's book publishers because I've had friends who've done that. And then, my number one skill set is I'm really good at cold emailing. I have, and what makes me good is it's not that I write compelling emails. I'm actually a pretty verbose writer. It's that I don't care if I get rejected. And if I get rejected, I usually am like, okay, well, what could I have done differently next time? So it's always been this game of experimentation for me, cold outreach. And so then for me, if my number one skill is outreach, I don't want that, I don't want to outsource that to anyone else. I want to keep it because that's how I learn. That's how I learn. And what's amazing too is I've also had this separate dream where I think there's a lot of authors out there, especially those who are business professionals, where they have a full-time job, and they want to write a book, but it's hard to get an agent. It's hard to, to email a bunch of these different publishers. But there are people that I have in mind who I would love for them to write a book because I think they're the best in the game in technology and in entrepreneurship. And now they've seen me write a book. They've said, Wendy, like, I'm interested in writing a book too. So now I'm like, okay, well, what if my new publishing house that I'm creating, sort of really just for myself, but what if I could actually apply that to them in the future? So there is a world where I'm envisioning in my head now that I have my LLC, because, you know, as I'm learning this for myself, as I'm dog fooding essentially my own distribution, what would that look like if I were to apply it now to then, other authors who are first timers, who I think have stories that should be told, who know me and who otherwise wouldn't have done it.
And there's room to replicate this model at different ages for different types of books in different regions. And all the learnings that you have are just so incredibly valuable if you could repeat that.
Yes.
You are the best publisher you could have.
You will always be your best publisher. You are your ultimate salesperson. This is when I think about it, like the publishers are like venture capital funding. They're the investors. But at the end of the day, as a founder and the CEO of your own business, you are in charge of distribution. There's nothing that your investors can do that will really help you that much. Like, and like you sell yourself. I think that analogy is kind of similar in this world too, which is at the end of the day, these words are coming from your brain. This story that you're telling is going to mean so much more to you than it is to someone else. And so, who is the best person to sell? It's always going to be yourself.
It is easy to get discouraged. And I'm curious, can you think of a time where you did get discouraged in this process? Or can you tell us anything about who you leaned on for help?
Hmm.
Anything about this journey? Because, we're all sitting here like, wow, this is such an incredible success story. So many copies sold, huge donation. She's got a bright future ahead of us. What were the bumps in the road?
Of the 35 schools, actually now 40 schools, right, that I've read at in just the last few months, and my goal is to hit 160. Like that's my Guinness, that's my number. And by this time in May. So I want to target 100 by the year end and then or 60 before the school year ends next to hit when I hit my start first started. For just like these 40-ish schools, I probably emailed 400 schools, you know? Uh, and now I'm going back to some of those schools that didn't respond because now I have a much better, I'm more proven, right? And I have teachers who provided me quotes, who've said how great I am and how they would encourage me for any of their schools to read. Um, and so that's, but when I send these outreaches, I think what helps me psychologically, and I actually tell this to a lot of founders I've invested in, because the founder's journey is brutal. It's very brutal, especially when you're managing now like a team. You're responsible for their salaries. Um, the thing that helps me, and I tell other founders, is you have to ask yourself, why are you doing this? Right? I'm not doing this because I care about how many books I sell. I'm not doing Bo because I hope to be on a bestseller list. I really don't care about any of that. I do this because I want more kids to see themselves as authors. So my reason for doing this is incredibly pure. So when the no's come, they're not really that brutal. When and by the way, when I do a reading, you're always going to have a kid that says, I hate potatoes. That's okay. There, I have, whenever I say, who here likes French fries? They'll be like, I hate them. And then I see them smiling at the end and they're so happy. And they're the one nominating, what kind of potato uh, they should see when they go to the moon. So what's also very amazing about author visits is that kids are so honest. They're so intelligent, they're so creative, and they're also so honest. If the story doesn't stick, they'll tell you. They'll be like, I got confused here. Or like, I figured out later in this book that a lot of people think that the magical wizard is Bo's dad, but they're not. Like the wizard is not Bo's dad. They just kind of look alike. So now I know my next story. Oh, I got to be cognizant of that, right? Um,
The
so
ultimate focus group. I worked at a children's book publisher once when I was probably, I don't know, 19,
kids
going
are
through the
so
slush pile. And it was just funny to me that, a bunch of adults in an air-conditioned, corporate office were
yes.
looking through submission.
And
It's
I
like,
will say
how could the
this.
hit rate be that good?
What I will say is for anyone who's new to cold outreach, just like the act of sending a cold email, I used to be scared. When I was 18 years old, I was so scared. But both my parents lost their job in the 2008 recession, and I had to find my way to pay my way through UC Berkeley. I had to pay for everything because they no longer were able to provide any sort of support. And to even have support for them is so amazing, right? And so I worked 6 jobs when I was at Berkeley, on top of being a nationally ranked competitive dancer for Berkeley. So I had to learn how to send cold emails because that's how I got my jobs. My parents are immigrants. They don't really speak great English. So that moment when they lost their jobs in '08 was exactly what basically made it like, Wendy, you need to fucking go. Like you need to reach out to every UC Berkeley alumni. I sent like thousands of emails as a freshman, trying to get jobs, trying to get internships. And then that's how I got my first job in education, then my job in VC, which is really hard to get into, let alone as a woman. It's nearly impossible. And then, getting into a program that I was able to get into at Stanford, which is the dual degree program, which very few, has a less than 3% acceptance rate. cold email. My rule of thumb when it comes to cold emails, just do five. Do five, and once you get into it, just takes 5 emails to get into the room. Don't expect any response. Like go into like no one's gonna respond. Literally go into like no one's going to respond. But just send five. And then once you send five, sending 100's no different. You get into the habit of it and it becomes, oh, honestly, at that point, pretty addictive. So I send these emails when I'm honestly about like when I'm watching a TV show. Like I'm watching a TV and I just send these emails. I find it actually quite meditative.
I love Gemma's comment in the chat. She says, I don't want to have to hit send, so I schedule them in advance, whatever it takes. That's a good
That's
one,
a
Gemma.
great pro tip.
Yeah, that's a
And
good
once
tip.
you and once you do one cold email once to just someone, like I've always wanted to talk to Andy Wire at Project Hail Mary. I sent that guy a cold email 6 months ago. Guess who bought a copy of my book? Andy Wire did.
I love it.
Because his first book he ever wrote was a children's book. His
And he was
first
self-published as well.
and he self-published it too.
Yep.
And I was asking for advice because I was stuck on this one character in my book of a children's book. And then he was like, well, you should try this. His advice was try writing another book entirely. So I did that.
Hmm.
And then I came back to this. And I let him know that that bit of advice really changed. And I sent him all these pictures of my story. And he was like, that's awesome. How did I find his email? He has an author's website. I really just hit him up on his author's website and he responded within the same day. So like, people like him, they respond when you write a really thoughtful email, and they do. And like that could change everything.
Absolutely. Now we have some more questions for you, Wendy. What about, are you also speaking at public libraries was another inquiry.
I have actually my most favorite public library I've spoken at is the number one public library in the world. And it's called Oodi Library, OODI, in Helsinki. Talk about being scared. So this is the number one ranked library in the world. So the International Federation of Libraries has named this the best library. And to anyone here who's been to Finland, you gotta, honestly, everyone in their life should go check out this library because I'm not surprised why Finland has one of the highest, happiest, has some of the happiest people. So I did not expect to do this. I was in Finland for fun. And I saw that they had the number one public library. I'm like, wow. I bring Bobo with me everywhere. So I even brought it with me to Finland, just maybe, right? And I go there and they speak Finnish. I speak only English. Luckily, the Finnish people do speak English too. And I asked them, do you guys ever do story time? And they're like, oh, like we do. And then I said, what if I came back tomorrow? And they said, okay, all right. Then they warned me. They're like, most of the parents and the kids here for this age, they really don't speak English. They mostly speak Finnish. I'm like, that's okay. I'm going to do this. So I looked up a couple of Finnish words and the pronunciation. I welcomed myself sort of in Finnish. And this to this day, it was the scariest one I ever did because I had all these people who didn't look like me and just looking at me. And I had no idea if they knew what I was saying. But what was amazing? And this is why they say you always perform to one person. There was this one kid who was visiting from Taiwan, which is where my mom's from. And he was visiting with his parents and he sat down right in front. And luckily he spoke English. He was like a little older, like 7 years old, and he loved it. And so the whole time I'm like looking at him and he's engaging and he has so many great questions afterwards. And his mom had said that his kid had never seen an Asian author before do a reading like this. So, that was very touching, right? Because it could have been so easy for me to be like, I don't speak Finnish. Let's not even think about this. And now here we are. So yes, I have done public libraries. This is my favorite. I've also done four as part of the Brooklyn Public Library system. But that's also because my book's now in rotation. And so,
How did that happen?
oh, I mean, the library session you did was really fantastic, right? But how that happened was I hit up so I'm a very avid goer of my Greenpoint Public Library. I go honestly every week. And at this point, the librarians know me. So they told me a long time ago, they had said, Wendy, like, this is what the process looks like. And what had helped was that I had So, being submitted, I only got in really like maybe like close to 6 to 8 weeks ago. So it's fresh, right? But what helped is they said, Wendy, wait till you do some readings at the schools. Do the schools first, and then in your little packet that you send, you mail them to the Brooklyn Public Library, include some of those pictures because that'll show them that you're speaking to the community. Because as actually you brought a librarian in, what the libraries care about is that you as an author are meeting the community, that you are part of the fabric of the community and giving back. So for me, the story times actually very much directly help that narrative. Hmm.
Leverage your local relationships. Once you get those screenshots of your local reading, you share it with librarians and then you can show it to other librarians. It's such a smart, that's really, really smart.
It's
I
it's
love that.
it's when you do things because you want to, when you do things for good, people
Mm,
can feel that.
yes.
When you're doing
Yes.
something, okay, when you're trying to so the Gen Z word for selling something is to shill it. So all these people be trying to shill stuff. They're trying to sell it. There's a nasty feeling that comes with that, right? But when you're doing something because you genuinely want to provide a value, right? So in this case, like I really want to help these kids see themselves as entrepreneurs, right? Of which the vessel is as an author, as writing their own book, which could just be stapled, right? That they photocopy and give to their family and friends. To me, like that's number one. And so then the byproduct ends up being things like story times at schools, which then helps with getting readings at the bookstores, which then helps with getting more visibility at the libraries. And by the way, like reading at Helsinki, like every librarian knows this is like the holy grail when it comes to public libraries in the world. So this is what's getting me into like San Francisco's public library system, where I don't even live there anymore. I'm not a local there anymore. But because they knew that I read at Helsinki, right? And I've become now like friends with the Helsinki librarian, like little things like that. That's like the networking effect that starts to happen because now SF Library, which is I think frankly better than the ones here in Brooklyn, they're like, whoa, okay, the social proofing is like starting to begin. Well, I mean, we'll see if it happens. But it's begin
That's incredible. That's awesome. I love it. And I love that just a reminder, just like keep going back to why did you write the book in the first place? I mean, of course.
whenever you're feeling
Um,
bad, go back to the
um,
customer.
Wendy, do you keep an email list and be in regular communication with your places where you've read, with parents, with educators, readers at large, or is that not the right channel for you?
I need to figure it out. So like the principals, because I'm in direct contact, and with the TKs and the kinder students, I'm in direct contact. With parents, that's a little different because they're buying from Ingram. I hate that on Ingram I can't see who's buying. So that really bothers me. Like I can't see that. So at the parent level, I can't really see if they're purchasing it from there. So which makes me think at some point I need to think about how I rearrange essentially my distributor, right? But the libraries and the schools are just so accustomed to Ingram. So that is an equation that I need to think about later. But for teachers, principals, um, I have my website, as well too. So people usually like they'll email me there. I think my email listserv right now is probably close to around like it's probably like 1,000 people. And then I'll just kind of
Amazing.
over time.
Amazing. Amazing. Any merch?
I wish this was
Stuffies?
merch. This was just a gifted hat. My friend
Potato
got me some.
stuffies? Potato
I would love
squishies?
to.
Squishies are all the rage.
I've
Just
had my
saying.
my dream with Bo actually now is I want to do a book for every country. So space is next, but as these kids get a little older, I'd love for Bo to go to I would love for Bo to go to every state. Every state does potatoes their own different way. I would love for Bo to go to every country. Every country has their own version of a really awesome potato dish. Um, I would love Bo to become an animated series. Kind of like Dora the Explorer. And then with that, things like yeah, like plushies, um, you know, hats, all these
Yeah,
keychains.
very cool. No, there was already people the authors on this call are ahead of you. They're like, she would be great on TV. Lot of
Oh,
love. Lot of love for your story here and your generosity and just sharing all of these amazing takeaways and tips, how you got into libraries, bookstores, schools. Unbelievable. Leah said she would buy the hat. I agree. I think you could definitely you could get down with the merch. I just want to just remind you guys, were you on vacation in Finland? I mean, always bring
yes,
your
it's
book
just
with you.
vacation.
Yeah, always bring your book with you. And you look for any opportunity to connect with somebody over that. And that's such a, we had somebody on office hours talking about how they connected with people in a parking lot, connected with the
Yes.
dentist at the dentist's office,
Yeah.
wherever it is. You always have to have it with you.
I just did a story time at the Whitney. Um, and the Whitney's very precious about who leads story time there.
Mm.
But I did that. Honestly, I'd emailed them probably close to 10 times. Just trying to find the right person. And then, you know what? On a random Sunday, because every second Sunday it's free. Whitney is a very famous museum out here in New York. Very, very famous. Very, very heady. You got to be very artistic to be in there. And I just went on a random second Sunday with my husband, and they just happened to have a kids section there. So then I just asked, "Hey, do you guys do story times?" And then they introduced me to the head of education for the Whitney, this large museum. I've been trying to like figure out who it is and get a contact tent for like 10 cold emails and have not been successful. And then we just bonded. Um, and and then she was like, "You should do a reading for us." And that's how it happened.
It's that in-person sizzle. You just ask, create the connection.
Yes.
Love that.
And the first time's always scary, but then, you know, when you get rejected, they're not rejecting you. They're just rejecting like sometimes it just doesn't work. And then you just kind of forget about it and then move on.
A lot of people would like to know how you found your illustrator.
So my illustrator is my friend. So we kind of have the same name. Her name is Wendy. So I'm actually a pretty good illustrator. I'm just not that savvy in vector-based design, which is what I wanted this book to be. So eventually I do want to get better and better where I can be like Dave Pilkey and do my own. But Wendy is actually a friend of a friend of a friend. I the one great thing is when I have an idea in my head, I always tell people. I never keep a secret because I've just seen how people can help you. And so then a friend of a friend of a friend had said, "Oh, actually, my friend Winnie just did like she's just become full-time children. She used to work in tech as a designer." And I saw her work and I said, "Wow, this is really, really great." Because she herself was going full-time into children's book illustration.
Oh,
She'd come from the world of tech. So I just was talking to some people. Um, and then they said, "Why don't you meet Winnie?" I had talked to like two other illustrators. I didn't think that they were as connected to what I was building. And I love her. She's great. Like she'll definitely be doing my next book. And then hopefully
beautiful.
somewhere along the way, I'll kind of learn the software systems to help become a better digital designer.
We have a comment that you reach children in profound ways, which could very well shape their well-being, and which is awesome because you have success as well.
Mhm.
And another comment that your story is so impressive and shows how having a purpose beyond selling copies is an underrated superpower. Best of luck to you, and lots of bravos, and just really a lot of great vibes from the authors on this call for everything you've been doing and sharing this with us. I feel inspired myself. So can't wait to see where you take the rest of the series and, of course, the Guinness World Record as well. I have no doubt you're going to nail it. And we hope you'll come back. Will you come back again and tell us the
Oh
other
my God,
side of the
yes.
story? That
I
would be great.
Once I get that Guinness, I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna show you the certificate.
We're
Uh,
going to throw a party, and there's going to be a lot of French
I'm gonna
fries.
eat so many, but I already am dreaming. I'm gonna have a potato party. We're gonna have all different kinds of potatoes. Uh,
Amazing. How
I'm
can
really
everybody reach you if they want to follow your story? What's your website? Is
My
it your
website's
baby name?
easy. It's just bothebakedpotato.com. No hyphens, no
Perfect.
periods, just simple like that. Bothebakedpotato.com.
Excellent.
And
Okay.
then yeah, I'm excited for everyone here. Everyone, you're doing it. This is entrepreneurship, right? You are a creative entrepreneur. It's hard. It's hard, but it's also such a fun experience. And it's so cool to be able to challenge yourself every day, not only with writing on the creative side, but with like being your own. You got to treat your book like it's a business. It is a business. Right? That
Absolutely.
stuff is inherently tricky, difficult. You got to push yourself, but that is the entrepreneur's journey. the entrepreneur's journey is pushing yourself in ways that you have never felt before. Um, and even if it doesn't maybe sell as many copies as you would desire, you will always walk away feeling as if, you fucking did it, right? And it's even more scary to put your own idea out there, like your own words. I'm writing a separate like this. So Bo inspired me to write a young adult book, very rom-com-y. So I just finished the second edit. And even that one, I'm a little scared to put out there in the world because I'm like, whoa, people are going to get access to like my rom-com kind of brain.
Oh
Uh,
no, you need some early readers. I'm
I
sure there's
know.
some
So like
people
that
on this
whole world, like
call
even
who
I
will
have to push
oblige.
myself there too. Bo is different. Bo's so easy for me. That one, I have to, I'm pushing myself and flexing myself in ways there that I haven't had to with Bo. And so even within authors, it's like even authors now, especially those that are switching genres, like they're constantly feeling that challenge too sometimes.
Thank you again for sharing all this really vital information and anecdotes, and most of all, inspiration. It is beautiful.
Thank you. Really great to be here. And glad that you do this. It's so helpful to everyone.
Love to have you back, and happy Friday, everybody.
Eat some potatoes.